looking at Section 2 of Chapter 2 in Advanced Placement United States History concerning the French and Indian War, the examination of it, the beginning, the middle, rough military section. But most importantly, when we cover the French and Indian War, it is the after effect leading to the Revenue Acts, and then eventually the American Revolution that is most paramount for understanding. Standards address have been provided as far as your Michigan Huskies. We're looking at their objectives. We're continuing on, identify various individuals and groups that led to the American Revolution. And then we're adding to our objective list today, describe key events and their impact. Now, one thing when you guys are working on your objectives, the second objective, like the first on this slide, we will be building. So you will not be able to complete both of these today, but you'll continuously add to them. So make sure that when you're working on these objectives, you continuously add to them. The second objective on your sheet as a whole, as far as the 2 types of revolution, you can complete that and should have that completed by this point. Homework has been provided. You can see nothing's really changed there. The test is some point next week, depends on sequencing and where we are with review and whatnot in the class. So today we're looking at Document D. Who would like to share what they have for content? Oops. Go ahead.
I have James Otis' speech against the writs of assistance, 1761.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to partition this off into where your points are actually coming from. And here they are, 1, 2, and 3. Is there anything else you guys feel might need to be included in here? Do we kind of agree that the content section is all taken care of?
I agree.
Content's all taken care of. Now, one thing we'll revisit when we get to critique as far as credibility and whatnot is that right there. Okay? So when we get to critique, we'll re-reference back. Contextual messages, contextual points you all want to discuss. What did you guys find when looking at this document?
He seems angry with the writ.
Okay, now how... So we know that there's an emotion of anger or discontent about something. How are we able to support that using this document? Diction. So
yeah.
Go ahead. What is an example as far as the diction that we're using here?
He said, everyone with this writ may be a tyrant, and tyrants usually aren't considered good things.
Excellent. When we use the word tyrant, if you were to describe a ruler who's oppressive and holds absolute power, you might describe them as tyrannical.
Yes.
Okay? That's what we're looking at. So that's a heavy word to use when describing something. And look, he doesn't use it just once, but he pulls it up again. Okay? So the use of tyrant is important to know. Anything else here that we could have that supports the fact that the emotion here is one of anger?
When he says that the tyrant in a legal manner also may control imprison or murder or anyone within the realm.
Okay? So we have heavy words here. We're using heavy actions, imprisonment and murder. Okay? Anyone within the realm. Okay? What is the realm? Anyone?
The city.
The city, the facility, the area that we're looking at here. The new world as a whole. Okay?
I have no, where he says that a man's house is his castle, and whilst he is quiet, he is well guarded in the prison of the castle, saying that he believes that men should have their own right to their house.
Okay.
It seems like there obviously was something like going on where if you owned your house, you didn't have full control over it.
Good. So we got 2 major things we have already developed for contextual messages. Diction, the emotion of the whole, is angered. Okay? And then we're also referencing the fact that something is impeding upon one ability to govern their own household. Okay? Do you know what a writ of assistance is?
Like
A rule of assistance?
A rule of assistance. Now, what if I said we move this forward and we title it the Quartering Act? We're familiar with the Quartering Act?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe it?
It's when the British made the colonists hold the troops in their houses.
Good. You had to facilitate, feed, house, give them room and board and whatnot, regardless of your position on the war. Okay, so the writ of assistance, one thing I would have down here, this is the French and Indian War example. Okay? So that being said here, when we have the Quartering Act become forthcoming, it's not a new idea. All right? But now it's impacting people as a whole because it's a series of different acts that are already addressing an aggravated group of colonists.
Now, is this writ saying that you can't do as you please in your own home? It sounds like that's what it's saying in this context.
You can do as you please?
You can't anymore.
Exactly. Because the possession, your facility, your structures that you own, at this point would also be considered possession of the crown. Okay? Because you're a citizen of the crown. Does that make sense?
Okay.
All right, so that's what this is doing here. Now, one thing, well, I won't go there yet. But yes, I would compare and contrast the writs of assistance 1761 to your Quartering Act.
Okay.
All right, because this is going to be the foundation that we're going to see here. As the Articles of Confederation will be one of the founding keystones to the Constitution, the writs of assistance are to the Quartering Act of the American Revolution. Okay? What other contextual messages do we have here?
Along with addiction, this is like persuasion.
Annihilate.
Good. He's using persuasive words. Okay? Give me an example here.
If it should be declared legal, it would totally that. Yeah.
Annihilate.
Yeah.
If it should be declared legal, it would annihilate
Yes.
your privilege. Okay? Annihilate is a heavy word there, meaning it's never coming back. You've agreed to it, and you can never enjoy said freedoms again. Now, another thing I would use here as far as persuasive language, because we're going to go with this, and that's an excellent point here. I'll put that down number 3. P. Lang, okay, persuasive language. Liberty is the freedom of one's house. Look at that section right there. Liberty is the freedom, okay, which is something that all men, because all men being people, population, women included, because they exist, should be guaranteed to them. It is an inalienable right. Does anyone know where I'm going with this direction? There was an Enlightenment thinker who said that as well. His first name's John. John Locke. What was that known as?
Natural rights.
Natural rights or Lockean theory. So I'd write that down. Natural rights or Lockean theory. Okay? This is what we are addressing here. And this is what the population needs to hear. If the writs of assistance passes, these here are gone. Okay? You no longer have the ability to govern your house. You are a possession of the crown. Okay? Excellent job with context. That being said, critique author and author credibility.
Okay, yep.
Go ahead.
I said James Otis, and I said author credibility limited because I don't think any of us can just spout out who James Otis is, and also it's a speech, so this is like quoted, meaning that his words could have been different than what was written down.
Okay. Now, when we analyze as far as, when you're looking at it as far as it's a quote of a speech, make note that you have an ellipsis. So this is a smaller section of the speech as a whole that we're specifically looking at here to get a point across. But yes, James Otis, not a lot is known about him initially, and because it's a speech, and the use of passionate language, persuasive language, heinous language, it is 100% bias. Okay, so you would have that under source credibility. Author, James Otis, credibility, limited, semi-unknown, and bias. You have to have bias. Then you're going to bring up bias again when you do source credibility. Okay? This would be like I'm standing in front of the room and spouting off to you all, trying to rally your support on why I think you should be allowed to have your cell phone on you at all times, using a contemporary issue. Okay? And I would tell you things as far as, if there's an emergency, I believe as a parent you should be able to contact your parents and let you know, hey mom, I'm okay. And I would tell you these things that are going to strike a nerve and maybe hit a personal experience in which you use your cell phone in a positive manner. And I would just keep going that route, and I would never reference an issue of cyberbullying because I don't want you to consider that. He will never reference the benefits of the writs of assistance as far as mutual protectionism, as far as having a standing army in your local area. He won't do that because he doesn't like it. Okay, which again is the bias and then limited credibility. Intended audience, what do you guys think?
The crowd.
The crowd who's listening to the speech, correct?
I said English citizens.
You could have English citizens, the citizenship as a whole, colonists, okay? Because this is directed at the people. One thing you should have maybe consider as far as audience, non-lawmakers, okay? Because they're the ones who are going to go through with trying to getting this passed. Source credibility as a whole.
I said like limited or none because you can see it's like not the whole entire speech. It's like the dot.
Yep.
It's like part of it.
Okay.
So you don't know what the rest of the speech is, and then
that could have been his counter. Like that could have, for example, could be like a counter argument. He was really for we don't know what it was prior to that.
Okay, so you could have limited in that this is an excerpt of a greater document.
Yeah.
It's a small portion of the speech. But as far as source credibility here, the main point that I would hit home, number one, it's a speech. It is 100% bias. It never tells you the positives of the writs of assistance. It only tells you how bad they are. Okay? When you have that level of biasness present, it makes the credibility of the document as a whole questionable. Okay? Any questions with this document? Excellent job today. Very proud of you all. That being said, we're going to go ahead and continue on the notes to make sure you have that section up and ready to rock and roll. And continue studying these documents, as one of them will appear on the test next week. French and Indian War. Focal points, the struggle in North America and the Ohio Valley. Okay? Very fertile, very rich, very diverse lands, and very much involved with Native Americans. Okay? The French began constructing forts to stop the westward expansion. They're going to receive a lot of Native American assistance on this because they also don't want the expansion of the English. It's their land. They don't want the English on it. Okay? British and colonial forces under the leadership of Governor of Virginia, George Washington. Again, here he is. He is not a general yet, but he's rising in the military strengths here. Engaged in the French Ohio Valley, were defeated. Colonists, with the encouragement of Britain, organized the Albany Congress. Now, this is one of your first examples of a standing government in the New World. Okay? This is one of your, and I would write this down, the Albany Congress, which will develop the Albany Plan of Union. This is one of your first examples of a federal government in the New World. Okay, that's a heavy idea. One of the first examples of a federal government in the New World. Immediate objective of the Albany Congress, keep the Iroquois nation loyal to Britain. Why do we want to keep this specific tribe loyal to Britain?
Aren't they the biggest tribe?
They are the creme de la creme of military might when concerning Native Americans along the eastern seaboard in the Ohio River Valley. Okay? This would be the group you want on board. Under the leadership of Ben Franklin, delegates drew up an American colonial response to the French, known as the Albany Plan of Union. Now, within this, a coalition government, which means what?
It's probably two things working together.
Multiple factions working together. Yeah. It's a common goal, is that of keeping the French out, keeping the Iroquois in. Okay? Provided to the American Congress, which would have the authority to carry out diplomatic relations, control territory, tax, and raise an army. What does that sound like? Just analyzing this final point here. Diplomatic relations, domestic and foreign, control territories, tax the citizens, raise an army.
Its own country.
It's your country. It's the republic right there. Okay, so like I said, when you talk of the Albany Congress and the Albany Plan of Union, that is the first stage of developing your American Constitution and the republic. All right, so make sure you have that down. That's a very heavy idea. Continuing forward. Early in the war, British suffered serious setbacks. General Braddock, there he is again. We know he's a gentleman, but we also know he's very effective on the battlefield. Okay, with the exception of Fort Duquesne. Many French colonists suffering hardships despite the countrymen's success on the battlefield. We know that their struggle in New France, Quebec, even downwards into Louisiana, is a much more troubled tale than the English. They struggled much more. Okay? That being said, they're also going to feel that on the battlefield. French Canadians living in Acadia, also known as the province of Nova Scotia now, driven out. They already are struggling to exist there, and now you have military invasions. It's almost we'll just retreat, take our icebox. Okay? Forced to settle in New Orleans, or also which will become Louisiana. Okay? Sir?
How do you go from Nova Scotia to settling in New Orleans?
Down the coast, because it's just far too hostile up there, and you would just board the ship and travel on. Yeah. Because you would hear the successes. Obviously, they will be way more successful in Louisiana.
Yeah.
1756, expanded to a global theater. Now, one thing, I mean, obviously, maybe you're not a fan of theater, but war is a stage performance, if you consider it like that. There are so many factors going on, like a theatrical performance. There are so many things you don't even realize are going on. Backstage, producers, lighting, etc. Same thing with war. Most of the time, you guys only cover the battles. But with the battles, those would not have existed without transport lines. Those would not exist without communication and all these other factors. This is a theatrical performance, which is why when you guys cover World War II, you have which two theaters? What are they? World War II, two theaters.
The European
and
the Asian.
The Pacific. The Pacific. Okay, good. 1756. Now we're going global. William Pitt, British Secretary of the State. Again, these titles are not different. Look what we're modeled on here. Common ground with the people to address the needs of the military. General George Washington, now titled. British colonial forces captured French Fort Duquesne. Also had major victories in New York. Okay, we're everywhere now. French finally sued for peace when French commander General Montcalm was defeated by General Wolfe and the Plains of Abraham.
Mr. George,
Sir,
we have a blank line.
we'll come back to it.
Okay.
Okay? Any questions here? Typically speaking, this is a war tactic. When it becomes global, you start attacking the other nation's colonies. Why would you do that? Why not just attack them straight up? Why go after their colonies?
That's their center
Where all
point.
their
That's like
money
the
is.
main. That's where all the money. That's where everything began. Like, center point of the.
Not so much money, but what else goes into capital? Capital, typically people go with finances, but what else is considered valuable capital to a mother country?
Trade.
Goods.
Trade, goods. You go after their natural resources. You can't wage a war if you don't have anything to build muskets and rifles and whatnot for that. Okay? Peace of Paris brought hostilities to a close and with it control of North America for the French, parts of it. Britain received all of French Canada and all territories south of Canada and east of the Mississippi River. So if you look at it like this, we earned everything in green here. Okay? Highly successful, right? What did we possess before then? Using this map, what do you guys think? Before this conflict took place, what all did we actually possess?
13 colonies.
The 13 colonies. Okay, so if you draw another line here, that was pre-French and Indian War. Look at the massive area afterwards. You now have to have standing military there. You now have to have a government to oversee the people. You have to expand your infrastructure to reach all of these new areas. Essentially, what you could just draw here is this. Okay? They won the war. They won a lot of land and a lot of value with it. You can't argue against that. But you also earned an extreme cost to govern all that. And that's a big idea there. France is an ally of Spain, lost all of the West Indian colonies, the Caribbean, even Florida will go to the English. Okay? Any questions thus far? Super. Other problems involving this conflict. Okay? Like I said before, port, fort, court. PFC. That's what we have to do to that entire area of the map. Okay? Everything there must be governed. Well, in order to have a standing government, you need to have X amount of people in charge of it, a local governor, a mayor if it's a municipality, some kind of a policing force, and all these other things. That equals cost. Revenue must be raised to absorb the cost of maintaining everything. Where does the government get its money?
Trade.
Trade, but typically speaking, the bulk of the government's funds are generated from what?
Now
Taxing the citizens. Okay, you just won this war. Spirits are high, but now you're going to impose a great wealth of taxes upon them, heavily taxed. Hostile Native Americans in the Appalachian region, okay, your Appalachian mountain range. You just earned the territory to the west of it. They were just fighting against you. Now you have a domestic enemy. All right, that's not a positive thing. That will not go over well. All right, Pontiac's Rebellion is an example of 1763 incursions by Native Americans. That's a prime example. What were domestic conditions like with the proclamation of 1763? Terrible. Colonists are angry. We're being taxed now, and Native Americans are angry. Pontiac's Rebellion and fighting against us. French Canadians need to be assimilated into the empire. What does that mean? To assimilate one.
To put in.
Bring in.
Madison?
To get used to the surroundings.
Okay, they have to acclimate themselves into the surroundings. Typically speaking, when one is assimilated into an empire, was it by their own will?
No.
No, they were forced. Okay? So now you're forcing French Canadians into the English style of living and to the English crown. They just lost a war. Okay, it would be like, for example, we'll use it in sports context. All right? Tigers versus the Cleveland Indians. Let's say the Cleveland Indians, which they're not, were in the position to take the AL Central. And we lose it in the final game of a series, and now all of a sudden, all Tigers fans now have to cheer for the Indians. Is that well received?
No.
Certainly not. You'll never see me flying a Cleveland flag anywhere on my property at home. Okay? And if someone proposed that idea, it would be laughable. But that's the conditions we have here with the French Canadians. You are now English citizens. You now have to adhere to English law, English customs. Yeah, right. That's not going to work. Okay? Continuing forward, new trade channels pose difficulties. Infrastructure, write that down. Infrastructure is a key component of trade. It is a key component of a nation's wealth as a whole. Colonists growing in wealth and status refuse to subordinate with the economic interests of the crown. Let's say you are a member of the planter aristocracy in the South. And for the sake of this example, you make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. But now, because we won this, and you are in the Carolinas, you had no interest in the war at all. You have no interest at all in Canada or the French or anything. You've been a member of the planter aristocracy for generations now, and now you have to pay 25% taxes on your wealth. Okay? If you make $100 grand a year, you now have to fork over $25,000 to the crown because of a war you did not care to win and territories you cared nothing about. You see how you just lost a significant portion of your population? A significant portion of your population with the wealth as well. Which is why when you have presidential elections, taxes is always brought up. Who's getting the tax break? Who's getting the tax hike? Is it across the board? What is the candidate's position? All right, that's why this is almost always brought up. Paying for programs that maybe your family, one, never uses, and two, doesn't approve of anyway. Okay? That's why these things always come up, and this is put on a national level here. Everyone is miserable. Problems that Britain finally faced by winning the war were so vast that many people, including myself, will say that the winning of this war, we were successful here, directly caused that. Okay? Britain's success in conflict, though great, during its time period, upwards to 1763, subsequently caused them to lose the colonies as a whole. They were so successful that they lost everything. It's like gambling. The first time they went to the casino with the French and Indian War, they were successful. But now we have to keep investing money to keep that operating cost going, and you lose everything. All right? Any questions? Excellent. Final point here. Both the colonies and the crown were equally disappointed with each other after the war. Political and economic issues caused the colonial independence movement to start. Okay? One more time to review what you have going on here. Objectives, you can continue this one. You can start this one. Homework been presented here to you. Keep rolling on this. Reminder, this screencast will be on YouTube. I'll send you out Remind 101 how to find that. And I might also post that to my website for those who need that. Excellent job today, everyone.